Welcome to Health 2660. Here we don't just talk about health, we tell the stories that heal. Now please listen to the story. Paul had always prided himself on his physique, a testament to a lifetime spent dedicated to physical education. Even after retirement, the image of Coach Paul, the man who could outrun most of his students, remained vivid in his mind. He envisioned the younger version of himself, effortlessly scaling the rope in the gymnasium, the roar of encouragement for his students echoing in the cavernous space. Those were the days when his body felt like an untiring engine, a well-oiled machine responding flawlessly to every command. Now, as he sat on his worn recliner, the springs groaning in protest, with every slight movement that image felt distant, almost like a character from a book he had once read. The transition had been subtle, almost imperceptible at first. It started with the occasional twinge in his knee, dismissed as a relic of an old basketball injury. Then came the stiffness in his back, attributed to years of demonstrating exercises and bending over to assist students. He had diligently applied ice packs, stretched, and popped ibuprofen, treating each ailment as an isolated incident, never connecting the dots to form the bigger picture of aging and gradual decline. But the most persistent and unsettling changes were happening internally in a realm he couldn't see or easily address with a quick fix. The first whisper of concern came in the form of frequent nighttime trips to the bathroom. Initially, he chuckled it off, attributing it to his evening cup of coffee or the extra glass of water he consumed to stay hydrated. Gotta flush out the system, he'd tell himself, a remnant of his coaching days when he preached the importance of hydration to his athletes. However, the frequency increased, disrupting his sleep and leaving him feeling perpetually tired. He'd lie awake for long stretches, the silence amplifying the urgency in his bladder, the nagging feeling that he needed to go again, even moments after returning to bed. He started to limit his fluid intake in the evenings, a decision that went against everything he had taught for decades, a decision born out of desperation for a full night's sleep. But the strategy proved futile. The urge persisted, seemingly independent of his hydration habits. Along with the nighttime awakenings came a subtle yet persistent pressure in his lower abdomen, a sensation he couldn't quite describe. It wasn't pain, not exactly, but more of a constant awareness of his bladder, a feeling that it was never truly empty. He started to make mental maps of restrooms whenever he ventured out, his internal GPS constantly scanning for the nearest facilities. He avoided long car rides and movies activities he once enjoyed for fear of being caught in a situation where he couldn't easily access a bathroom. His social life, once vibrant and filled with post-retirement gatherings with former colleagues and students, started to shrink. He made excuses, citing vague ailments and scheduling conflicts, slowly isolating himself from the world he had once embraced. Fatigue became his constant companion, a heavy cloak draped over his shoulders, weighing him down with each passing day. He attributed it to his disrupted sleep, the inevitable consequence of his nighttime bathroom excursions. He started to rely on coffee to get him through the day, a habit that only exacerbated his bladder problems, creating a vicious cycle of stimulation and urgency. He found himself dozing off in the middle of the afternoon, his recliner becoming his preferred sanctuary, a place where he could escape the demands of the day and surrender to the overwhelming exhaustion. His wife, Mary, noticed the changes, her brow furrowed with concern as she observed his increasing isolation and declining energy levels. She gently urged him to see a doctor, but Paul resisted his stubborn streak, honed over years of coaching and self-reliance surfacing to deflect her concerns. "It's just old age, Mary," he'd say, dismissing her worries with a wave of his hand. "Nothing a good night's sleep can't fix." But Mary knew better. She saw the weariness in his eyes, the forced cheerfulness that masked his discomfort, the subtle signs of a man struggling with something more than just the passage of time. She had been his partner for over 40 years, witnessing his triumphs and supporting him through his challenges. She knew when he was hurting, even when he tried to hide it. One evening, after a particularly restless night, Paul found himself unable to sleep, the pressure in his bladder reaching an unbearable level. He tossed and turned, trying to find a comfortable position, but nothing seemed to alleviate the discomfort. He got up and went to the bathroom, but the relief was minimal and short-lived. He returned to bed, but the urge quickly returned, accompanied by a sharp stabbing pain in his lower abdomen. He doubled over in agony, a groan escaping his lips, waking Mary from her sleep. "Paul, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice filled with alarm. He tried to speak, but the pain was too intense, rendering him speechless. He clutched his stomach, his face contorted in agony. Mary immediately called 911, her hands trembling as she relayed their address to the dispatcher. The ambulance arrived quickly, the paramedics rushing into the house, their faces etched with concern. They assessed Paul's condition, administering pain medication and stabilizing him for transport. As they wheeled him out of the house on a stretcher, Paul felt a wave of shame wash over him. He had always been the strong one, the protector, the provider. Now he was being carried away, like a helpless invalid, his body betraying him in the most humiliating way. The emergency room was a chaotic scene of flashing lights, beeping machines, and hurried voices. Paul was quickly triaged and assigned a bed in a crowded bay. Doctors and nurses swarmed around him, asking questions and running tests. He felt like a specimen under a microscope, his privacy and dignity stripped away by the impersonal efficiency of the medical system. After what seemed like an eternity, a doctor finally approached him, his face somber and his voice grave. "Mr. Peterson," he said, "we've run some tests, and it appears you have an enlarged prostate, also known as benign prostatic hyperplasia, or BPH. It's a common condition in men your age, but it can cause significant urinary problems if left untreated." Paul listened intently, his mind racing to process the information. He had heard of BPH before, but he had never considered it a serious threat. He had always focused on cardiovascular health and muscle strength, neglecting the more subtle aspects of his internal well-being. "The good news is that it's treatable," the doctor continued. "There are medications and surgical procedures that can help alleviate your symptoms. However, I want to be frank with you. Your condition has progressed significantly, and it's likely that your lifestyle habits have contributed to the problem." The doctor paused, his gaze meeting Paul's with unwavering intensity. "You can't just rely on medication to fix this. You need to make some serious changes to your daily routine. Sitting for prolonged periods, excessive caffeine consumption, a diet high in processed foods, and habitually holding in your urine. These are all factors that can exacerbate BPH symptoms." The doctor's words hit Paul like a ton of bricks. He had always prided himself on his healthy lifestyle, but he realized that his definition of health had been superficial, focused on external appearances rather than internal well-being. He had been neglecting his body's subtle cues, ignoring the warning signs until they had escalated into a full-blown crisis. "This isn't just about your prostate, Mr. Peterson," the doctor said, his voice softening slightly. "This is about your overall health and quality of life. You need to start listening to your body and making conscious choices that support its well-being." The doctor prescribed medication to help alleviate Paul's immediate symptoms, but he emphasized that it was only a temporary solution. The real healing, he stressed, would come from adopting a healthier lifestyle. As Paul lay in his hospital bed, surrounded by the sterile environment and the hum of medical equipment, he had a profound realization. He had spent his entire life teaching others how to take care of their bodies, but he had failed to apply those same principles to himself. He had become complacent, allowing his health to deteriorate through neglect and ignorance. The doctor's words were a wake-up call, a harsh but necessary reminder that he was not invincible, that his body required constant care and attention. He resolved to make a change, to transform his lifestyle and reclaim his health. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to succeed. He owed it to himself, to Mary, and to the memory of the vibrant, energetic coach he once was. The next morning, Paul was discharged from the hospital with a renewed sense of purpose. He filled his prescription and scheduled a follow-up appointment with his primary care physician. But more importantly, he started to implement the lifestyle changes recommended by the doctor. He began by addressing his hydration habits. He replaced his morning coffee with herbal tea and increased his water intake throughout the day. He made a conscious effort to drink small amounts frequently, rather than gulping down large quantities at once. He also eliminated sugary drinks and processed juices from his diet, opting for fresh fruits and vegetables instead. Next, he tackled his sedentary lifestyle. He set a timer to remind himself to get up and move every hour. He started taking short walks around his neighborhood, gradually increasing the distance and intensity as his body allowed. He rediscovered his love for the outdoors, exploring local parks and trails, breathing in the fresh air and soaking up the sunshine. He even dusted off his old bicycle and started going for leisurely rides, reliving the carefree days of his youth. He also addressed his dietary habits. He eliminated processed foods, fast food, and sugary snacks from his diet. He focused on eating whole, unprocessed foods, such as fruits, vegetables, lean protein, and whole grains. He learned how to cook healthy meals and experimented with new recipes, discovering a passion for culinary arts he never knew he had. He started reading food labels and making informed choices about what he put into his body. He also began practicing mindfulness techniques to manage stress. He learned deep breathing exercises and meditation techniques to calm his mind and reduce anxiety. He started spending time in nature, listening to the sounds of the birds and the rustling of the leaves, allowing himself to be present in the moment. He also rekindled his social connections, reaching out to former colleagues and students, organizing gatherings, and participating in community events. He realized that social interaction was essential for his mental and emotional well-being. Over time, Paul started to notice a significant improvement in his symptoms. The frequency of his nighttime bathroom trips decreased, the pressure in his bladder subsided, and his energy levels soared. He felt like a new man, rejuvenated and revitalized. But the most profound change was in his attitude. He had learned to listen to his body, to respect its limits, and to appreciate its resilience. He had discovered a new kind of strength, not just physical strength, but also mental and emotional strength. He had transformed his life not just by changing his habits, but by changing his mindset. He became an advocate for men's health, sharing his story with others and encouraging them to take proactive steps to prevent and manage BPH. He attended workshops and seminars, learning about the importance of healthy lifestyle choices and early detection. He became a role model for healthy aging, demonstrating that it was possible to live a vibrant and fulfilling life, even in the face of chronic health conditions. He and Mary renewed their social life and were often seen together, walking hand in hand, laughing, and sharing stories with their friends. Mary watched with pride as Paul blossomed, his eyes sparkling with renewed energy and his face radiating with joy. Health 2660. Thanks you for listening. We'll see you in the next video. And until then, be kind to yourself.